Hello everyone, my name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. Welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Today is the 10th anniversary exactly of Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. I cannot believe it's been 10 years. I saw it opening day, AMC Eastridge in San Jose, at, I want to say it was either 10:45 or 11 o'clock in the morning on that day, and I remember it very distinctly. I got to the theater about an hour early. There were already people in the theater when I got in. There was a lot of excitement in the air. And the anticipation that I felt was off the charts. So let me go back to before the movie came out. Like a lot of people, I had gotten deep into the speculation. And it was because of The Force Awakens that I have maintained the idea of not getting too involved in trailers or teasers for any movie. Because I ended up being irresponsible with the anticipation. So, like a lot of people, I overanalyzed the trailer and the teasers. I analyzed them to death, including the behind-the-scenes sizzle reel. And because of that, I had already pieced together some of the story, or at least how things were going to play out in the story. For example, the trailer and the teasers combined made me realize, or at least think, that Finn and Poe were probably going to escape together from the Star Destroyer at the opening of the movie. And turned out I was right. It would have been more fun not to know that. Going into the movie. That's just one of the examples. And ever since then, I've decided not to watch, well, for any movie coming up, particularly the ones I'm really excited about, I don't watch the trailers very much, and I don't try to look at them frame by frame and try to analyze every detail. Because that kind of led me astray with The Force Awakens. And I was able to piece together some of what was going on. Now, like most of the Star Wars fans that are insane like me, when those of us who are really deep in the fandom, had already surmised that Kylo Ren was Han and Leia's son. Now, to the average person, I think that was a surprise. To those of us who are really, overly deep into this stuff, that was a no-brainer. Oh, oops. Hang on a sec. Sorry, technical difficulty there. Anyhow, as I was saying, those of us who were deep into the fandom, the Kylo Ren thing was not a big deal. We already knew it. But I think the average person had no idea about that, or because they're not as invested to the degree that fans like myself are. That's one of the downsides of being an uber fan like myself. Is that one ended up being a no-brainer. And then of course there was all the speculation. Oh boy. The speculation was rampant. Obviously the big one for fans like myself was the Snoke is Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis the Wise, mentioned in Episode 3, there was a whole lot of ridiculous fan speculation about the fact that Darth Plagueis obviously had to be the villain. Even though there was no evidence to suggest that that would ever be the case. It made sense to some, including myself. But now that I look back at it, it really doesn't make sense, other than it would be an interesting way to tie the saga together. But that ended up being Palpatine that was up to it, which I actually think makes a little bit more sense. But as I said, the the tendency of fans who are very deep into this stuff is to go deep into the speculation that maybe is irresponsible, which is why I'm very grateful to our friends at Force Center for pointing out or creating the slogan, speculate responsibly. Which is, I think, something we should all do. It's very easy to get into the speculation game. But then you run the risk of, if those speculations don't come true, you get angry. You get mad. And you say, well, this sucks. Not because it's not well made, but because it didn't live up to your idea of what should happen. And also, I think it was our good friend Jennifer Landa who pointed out that Star Wars, like other art, is not like ordering fast food. You're not there to make a list of, this is what I want, and if I don't get it, I'm angry. That's not how art works. Now, many of us who never made a movie and probably go, well, they should have done this, this, and this. Those of you who are old enough will remember everybody had their idea of how the Star Wars prequels should have gone. You know, you remember, oh, if I had written The Phantom Menace, I would have done this. Or Anakin should have been a dark, brooding teenager. You know, we all are guilty of it. And so I think that it's important to engage with the art presented to you. We have our good friend Joseph Scrimshaw to thank for that one. You don't have to like it, but engage with it. Don't fill your head with what should have been there. Look at what is there. Okay, getting all of that out of the way, the movie itself. I think The Force Awakens is a good movie. And I thoroughly enjoy it, and I've watched it many times. Now, this might sound odd to say, but it is my least favorite of the three sequels, but I still say favorite. Because I like all three of them very much. And just so I don't have to repeat this again, I am so tired of the they didn't have a plan nonsense. I'm so sick of hearing it. So, I'm not going to address that. The sequel trilogy fits together for me. And now, as far as The Force Awakens, it is a very straightforward film. Arguably, it is very bare bones. Because it is straightforward. It's the other two films that get the meat on the bones. But The Force Awakens is a straightforward adventure film. And it has been argued that it is too similar to A New Hope. There are similarities, but it is not identical. I think that one of the strongest elements of The Force Awakens is the introduction of our new characters and the reintroduction, particularly of Han Solo. You know, Luke doesn't get hardly much to do in this film. And Leia gets some to do, but not as much. But reintroducing Han Solo, reintroducing the Millennium Falcon, amazing. Now, as far as our new characters, particularly Finn, Rey, and Kylo Ren, the introduction of these characters is magnificent. In the case of Finn and Rey, in their first scenes, they have no dialogue. But we learn everything we need to know about them just by visuals. And in the case of Rey, the incredible music for her. I remember very clearly sitting in the theater opening day. Rey is scavenging in the crashed Star Destroyer. She gets out, she takes off her mask, and slides down the hill on that toboggan, sliding down the sand. Rey's score starts playing. Rey's theme, obviously by John Williams. It was in that moment where I said to myself, I think they've done it. And also the decision to play that scene with no dialogue and only minor sound effects, to let John Williams' music shine. A brilliant decision. Now, I was one of those people who very foolishly said, I don't think this is John Williams' best score. Or I think this was kind of a boring score. But then I bought the soundtrack and listened to it again and again. I was wrong. We were wrong. Rey's theme in particular, along with the March of the Resistance, Kylo Ren's theme, is what makes the score of this film great. The introduction of Finn was great. The introduction of Kylo Ren, perfect. The one thing I want to point out The movie is called The Force Awakens. Now, where is it awakening? Well, obviously in Rey. She has the Force within her strongly, but doesn't realize it. It's raw and untapped. Kylo Ren notices that after he tries to read her mind, and she fights back. The way that the Force works in Star Wars is sometimes misunderstood. Everyone has the Force in them. Some people are prodigies. And in the case of Rey, she didn't know she had it in her. But it manifested itself in many ways. And it wasn't until her encounter with Kylo Ren that she was able to unlock an understanding of the Force. And actually learn to wield it. So the Force is awakening within Rey. I think it's also awakening in Finn. We learn that the stormtroopers of the First Order are conditioned. As General Hux says, programmed from birth. We learn that Finn has no signs of nonconformity, or at least he hasn't displayed any in the past. And yet he does this time. Why is that? Well, there's two reasons, I think. One is he tells Rey that the attack on the village at the beginning of the film was his first battle. He used to work sanitation. I guess they needed stormtroopers, so they pushed him into it. But he chose not to kill. How was he able to break that conditioning? I think it's because the Force was awakening within him. Now, certainly there has been a lot of debate, even from John Boyega himself, as to whether or not his character was used properly in the sequels, the way that we thought he would. I have my own opinions. I strongly disagree with the arguments. I don't think he was sidelined, but that's just my opinion. But I believe the Force was awakening within him. And that's how he was able to resist. So we have that. And the awakening of, in its own way, of Kylo Ren. Because the choices he makes in this film, particularly to kill his dad, I think is the beginning of the end of Kylo Ren. In its own way. And that's a whole nother discussion. But speaking of his dad, let's talk about the reintroduction of Han Solo. I think Harrison Ford delivers one of, if not his best, performance as Han Solo in this film. Han Solo is a misunderstood character. We like to think of him as the devil-may-care badass. And that's not really who he is. The Han Solo is a mask. It's false. It's a barrier that he puts up to hide his own insecurity and vulnerability. Solo, the movie, goes very well with The Force Awakens in showing the real Han Solo behind the mask of Han Solo. Now, there's a lot that we can say about Han Solo in The Force Awakens. And yet again, the irresponsible speculation that Han somehow knows who Rey is. You know, and you remember all the, she's Luke's daughter. We kind of went a little bit nuts with that speculation. But as far as Han Solo is concerned, yet again, those of us really diehard nerds probably, I think certainly, were agreed that Han Solo would probably die in this film. There's old rumors and speculation that Harrison Ford wouldn't come back unless they let him die. And all those, tinfoil hat-wearing conspiracy theories. But whether or not any of those are true, I don't know. But suffice to say, a lot of fans thought he would never come back. That they could never get Harrison Ford to come back. Yet again, irresponsible speculation. But nonetheless, we were all overjoyed when he came back. A lot of the diehard fans like myself had made up our minds that he was going to die in the movie. And it ended up being true. Was it a disappointment when I first saw it? Yes. But the more I've seen it, the more I thought about it, it made complete sense. Kylo Ren had vowed to Supreme Leader Snoke that he would kill his father and prove himself worthy in Snoke's eyes. Leia told Han, you have to confront our son. You're his dad. He doesn't have a good relationship with you. You need to go and try to patch it up if you can. I think Han Solo knew that if he were to confront his son, odds are he would be killed. I think Han knew that. But he had to try. And in that scene, it is all about vulnerability. Thus, there are no guardrails on that walkway. It's all about vulnerability. When Han says to Ben, take off that mask, you don't need it. I think he's also talking to himself. He's saying, no masks, no lies, no masks, no lies, no deceit, no hiding. I am going to be open with you, and I want you to be open with me. I think that's what's going on in that scene. The Han Solo disappears. And the real Han Solo opens himself up. The mask of Han Solo is put down. And Han, even though he knows he's probably going to die, is willing to put himself out on the line for his son. Obviously, it doesn't go the way that Leia had hoped. It doesn't go the way that Han had hoped. But Kylo, when he promised Snoke, I'll kill my dad and prove myself worthy, turns out no, it emotionally unbalanced him. In fact, Snoke chews him out for it. In The Last Jedi, Snoke points out that this was supposed to strengthen your resolve. But instead, it split your soul. Kylo Ren's attempt to prove himself failed, even though he thought it would succeed. A lot of the sequel trilogy is about the way that the characters perceive things. The way they think things are going to happen doesn't always happen. A lot of it is about perspective, and a lot of it is about a certain point of view. Nonetheless, Han Solo tries. And the greatest moment of that scene, after Kylo Ren stabs his father with his lightsaber, and Han looks rather shocked, what does he do? He reaches his hand out and touches his son's face. An act of kindness, an act of forgiveness, an act of compassion and affection, even in the face of his own death. It's that cheek touch that saved the galaxy. And it was such a brilliant idea in The Rise of Skywalker to repeat that scene. Only this time, Ben made the right choice. So I think the death of Han Solo made complete sense in The Force Awakens. There are so many things we could talk about in this movie. The pacing is good. The look of the film is good. The sound, the music. Incredible moments like Rey pulling the lightsaber to her. Great character introductions and reintroductions. And a cinematic legacy. The Force Awakens came out at a time when old franchises were getting resurrected. It might have been one of the earliest examples of that. And it leads us to where we are today. Whatever you think about Star Wars, and about where it is today, it is undeniable that The Force Awakens kick-started a new era. I can't believe it's been 10 years. And I am so glad that there has been time for us to process these films. I suspect that the reaction to the sequels 10 or 20 years from now will be the same as the reaction to the prequels. Because time is what defines art. It's easy to judge it in the moment. But when it really works is when time has passed and we look back and still remember it. And in fact, there will be a generation that has grown up with the sequels that when they reach adulthood, they are going to be the ones deciding the legacy. Not old fuddy-duddies like myself. But for me, I like The Force Awakens a lot. It reignited Star Wars and brought back the joy of the galaxy far, far away. And I wouldn't have it any other way. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. Thank you for tuning in to this 10-year retrospective on Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. May the Force be with you.